let's get caught up here. So your next homework assignment is up, and it's going to be, now that we have the watch talking to the phone, I'm going to teach you a couple of phone things. So we're going to go ahead today and get a table view set up on the phone side of things. All right, so this is our phone side right now. And we currently just have a label on here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag a new view controller out here. Let's see. Actually, we can do it with this guy. So I'm going to right click here, and we're going to do, so we're over in the phone application side of things now, okay? So I'm going to create a new file. We're going to create an alternate code behind for this main screen here. And the reason I'm going to do that is the code behind that comes with this guy looks like this. So this is where we put the IB outlets and things like that in there. But I actually want this guy to be a table view controller rather than a normal view controller. So you'll see this here in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here, and we're going to go to new file. All right, and we're going to do a Cocoa Touch class. And this guy is going to be a UITableViewController. Okay, so view controllers on the phone, or on the phone side of things, are kind of like our interface controllers on the watch side of things. Make sense? It's kind of equivalents to each other. So I'm going to call this guy main TVC for table view controller. We'll go ahead and create this guy. And the reason why I make him a table view controller is because then he comes with all of this table view controller stuff. So something that's a table view controller is going to implement the UITableViewController data source and the UITableViewController delegate. He's going to come with all that stuff. Okay? And his name is main TVC. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little cheat thing that I often do with apps. Is I'm going to go ahead and just make this guy just a plain view controller. Okay? Instead of a table view controller. So I use the table view controller thing for it to automatically generate these methods for me. All right? I'll have to remove the override message from there, but that'll get taken care of here in a few minutes. So I'm going to go now over to our storyboard. And right now, this guy is currently being backed by viewcontroller.swift. I'm going to make him now backed by main TVC Swift. So this guy is no longer a view controller. Now he is a, do I get a drop down? A main TVC. All right. And the reason I like to do this is it gives me some more flexibility over how my, let me actually drag this stuff over a little bit. Some more flexibility how I can design this screen. So I'm going to have a table view on this screen. So table views on the phone side of things are similar but a little bit different than table views on the watch side of things. Remember, on the watch side of things, we just dropped a table view in there, then we created a class that allowed us to build out what we want each row to look like, and then the watch kind of did the rest. Well, we have something that's already called a table view cell on the phone side of things, so we're going to set one up today. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a table view. We're just going to throw this guy out here. I'm also going to go ahead and grab a navigation bar. Should be down here somewhere. There's a navigation bar. And this is kind of the reason why I like to do this guy as a view controller that has the table view controller stuff. If this guy was just a table view controller, his whole screen would be a table view. I actually want to be able to put other crap on this screen, but also have a table view on there. Okay? So this table view is going to have a data source and a delegate associated with it. And the data source and the delegate are going to be the owner of this guy, which is the main TVC. All right? That's our code behind that we implemented over here. So this guy that was originally created as a table view controller, who has now been converted to just a view controller. That's what I did right here. So instead of it being a table view controller, he's now just a view controller. He now is going to have methods, presumably in it, for managing that individual table view, which is a subview of the view that this main TVC controls.
Like labels inside of the table
Yep.
view right there.
All view controllers control a view. All table view controllers control a table view. This guy is now a generic view controller. So under the hood, he controls just a view. And the view he controls is this guy right here. So you see here, this guy controls a view. So notice that the view he controls is the total background of this. Now inside that view, we have a subview that is a table view. And that subview has a data source and a delegate. That is, who is in charge of the stuff that is in this table and who's in charge of dealing with clicks and stuff for this table. And the guy who's in charge of this is the code behind of this view controller, which is our main TVC. Make sense? So this allows me, so this is kind of, I say it's a little trick, but this is a relatively uncommon thing to do. Most applications don't necessarily embed table views inside of other view controllers, or if they do, they have a table view controller, then they have a view controller, and then they add table view controller's view as a subview to this table view, or to this view controller. I like doing it this way. It makes it, I guess, prettier. Yeah.
So the benefit is being able to have two views inside of a single view controller?
The benefit, well, I guess the idea would be this. Often, a view controller has a lot of moving parts on it. Okay, so we might have a couple of buttons and some labels, a bunch of IB actions, a bunch of IB outlets. Okay, lots of things going on. In a typical table view controller situation, we have one moving part, a table view. Okay, the guy scrolls on his own and we can click on stuff on there, but we don't have like extra buttons and labels and all this other stuff. So really a table view controller doesn't do a whole lot. So if we can just take this one dude here, the one thing that makes a table view controller a table view, and drop him into a normal plain Jane view controller and just make him an outlet, but just make sure we implement the couple of functions that table view controllers typically have. Now we get the flexibility of a view controller in terms of me throwing a button here and throwing a label here and all this other stuff, but I also get the perk of having a table view of whatever size I want just thrown in here somewhere. Make sense? And this will make more sense as we actually expand this out. So what I'm going to do is make sure the view is hooked up here, and it is, and then make sure that this guy has his data sources set up, which they are. And then let's go ahead and give ourselves programmatic access to this table view. That's going to be possibly helpful for us, but let's just do it. So I'll go ahead and control click this in here. We'll give ourselves an outlet, and let's call this guy just TV, table view. All right, so far working with the phone is identical to working with the watch in terms of this types of stuff. Just the widgets we're playing with are a little bit different, right? This guy is called a UI table view as opposed to a WK table on the watch side of things. So a little bit different animals, but certainly at least first cousins. All right, very similar to each other.
Do you think that the methods contained in each of those are going to be pretty much the same, or do you think the phone's going to have a lot more?
They're going to be mostly the same in, well, I guess the answer to both of your questions is yes.
At least for the simple ones like this, they would be.
The core things are going to be the same. And we talked about this before with the watch. The reason there's different versions for the watch is they basically stripped out anything heavy out of it, so it will be friendly on the watch. So anything that doesn't have to be there is gone. That's why, for instance, our rows in there are just NS objects as opposed to something beefier than that. Yep. All right. So now we gave ourselves programmatic access to that. So let's go back into our table view, or our view controller here. The couple of functions that involve a view controller, and I have to take off the override because we're no longer a table view controller that's overriding functions he has. We're actually now a view controller that's choosing to implement some functions that our table view has said, I am planning on calling the function with this name because I've set you as my data source and my delegate. Okay? So this table view has chosen this view controller to be his code behind, his data source and his delegate, even though this code behind is not actually a table view controller. He's just a plain Jane view controller. Okay? Technically, he's a plain Jane view controller that implements UI table view data source and UI table view delegate. Those two dudes.
Do you even have to put those in up there?
You don't have to. In fact, is this bad syntax? Oh, it just says it doesn't conform to it. That's fine. We'll be fixing that here in a second. All right. So punchline is we don't override these functions because we're actually writing them for the first time right now. We didn't get them from our parent who was UI table view controller. Our parent is a plain UI view controller. Make sense? So I have to undo some of the damage I did by choosing to inherit from UI table view controller just to get these methods written for me. And then, so I'm undoing that damage with the overrides here. So just like on the watch side of things, we have to advertise to our table view how many rows are going to be in it. A table view on a watch doesn't allow us to have a number of sections, but the good news for us is almost every iPhone app only has one section in its number of sections in a table view anyways. But technically it's legal to have a table view on an iPhone that has multiple sections in it. Okay? So here's one function that is not required but will be called if it's there, and this guy will get called by the data source of our table view. So our table view, when he's filling himself up with data, he'll call this method one time to find out how many sections should I plan on finding? How many sections of data will you be providing me? Specifically, how many rows will you be providing me for the section for this number, for this section number? All right, so for right now, we're just going to hard code in a 5, and we only have one section. Okay, so as far as data sources go, this table view is going to have one section and 5 rows in that section. Now we come down to this part right here. We're going to also have to take away the override for this. Okay, this is the last piece of required. Actually, the only two that are absolutely required for table views are these two. Number of rows and cell for row and index path. Section is not required. Number of sections is not required. It just assumes it's only one section if you don't implement it. Okay? So,
what do you mean by in terms of sections? Like if there's like a split table or?
Yeah, why don't I just show it to you? We'll just assume there's 2 sections in this thing. And so actually, we're going to have a total of 10 rows. There's section 1, section 2, 5 rows in first section, 5 rows in the second section. So we're going to see a total of 10 rows with a section divider in there. So I'll show it to you here. All right, but the punchline is that this guy will get called each time. We have this thing here called a reuse identifier. This is pretty similar to on the watch side of things where we had to give our cell a name. So we're going to call this guy cell right here. And then we need to make sure this matches up to what's out here in our storyboard. Okay, so I'll come out here to the storyboard and we'll move that guy there. And we're going to say, just give me one prototype cell. There we go. I had to click it multiple times, which was weird. All right, so I'm going to click on that cell. Come on. There's my cell. Here's the reuse identifier. I'm just going to call it cell. So it has to match what I've advertised in code. All right, so I've called it cell out here. That means in code over here, in main TVC, this guy is going to dequeue a reusable cell with identifier called cell. So this is another difference between table views on the phone versus table views on the watch. The watch, remember we created table view items, which were of type, we called them dice rows, right? Our NS objects were dice rows that had 2 labels in them or whatever. Well, this guy, for performance reasons, has kind of, it pre-builds a collection of table view cells. And what it does is it builds enough table view cells that everything fits on the screen and then some extra ones on the top and bottom. So that as you spin through there, you're flicking through your table view, it can go ahead and dequeue one that already was in existence, so really quick, and then just update its contents for what the person's about to see, rather than have to generate brand new table view cells every single time the person's scrolling through there. Make sense? All right, so this is more of a performance thing. So in any case, we'll go ahead and grab a blank cell of type cell, and then for right now, we're just going to give it a value. We're going to say cell.textLabel.text is equal to, let's just say blah. Okay, so what happens here? This all deals with the table view data source. So as our table view on the screen calls back to his data source, and his data source is this main TVC. How do we know? Because we went to our table view here, and we went to his outlets, and we said, your data source is this guy, main TVC. We connected that, okay? His delegate is also that, but we're not actually writing any delegate methods yet. Delegates are for like handling clicks, that kind of stuff. Okay, so when this page first launches, what's going to happen is this table view is going to go and talk to his code behind. The very first thing he's going to ask is how many sections are there? He's going to find that there's 2 in this one. Then he's going to call this function twice, once for each section. The first time he's going to call in passing in section number 0, and he's going to get a 5 out of this. So how many rows are in section 0? There's 5. How many rows are in section 1? Also 5. Why? Because we're always returning 5 here. We're not asking the question, which section are you asking about? Then, for this many times this many times, we'll call this function. So this says, give me the cell for the row at index path. And an index path is a row number and a section number. So we'll have section 0, row 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll have row number, or we'll have section number 1, row 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this guy will actually get called 10 total times right here. And we can prove that if you want. We can just do a print getting cell. And each time through we'll grab a cell and we're just going to hard code its text to be blah. All right, and then we'll return the cell.
We hard code its text to be goat.
You can hard code it wherever you want. We're going to leave it as blah. So let's see. So now we have that hooked up. So let's go ahead and just run our phone app. Oh, definitely don't want to be dealing with label stuff here anymore. All right, so actually I'm just going to get rid of that view controller because we're not using it anymore. Let's see, number of sections.
Yeah, 7.
Oh, I no longer need these guys for the memory warning stuff. That all came with the table view stuff.
You need to get rid of the other override there.
This guy seems to be very upset about stuff. No, view did load is an overridable thing. Just take these out for right now. Oh, he's not a view controller. He's a UI view controller. Wonder when I took that off. I had to have deleted that. Wonder when that happened.
Oh, when you changed all that. I think you forgot that.
Oh, I didn't put the UI back on. Got it. Yeah, that makes a pretty big difference.
Oh,
Okay.
it works now.
Let's run this guy again. Okay, first of all, notice he's only called it 3 times right now. I advertised that he should call it 10 times, right? Why has he only called it 3 times?
It's only set to show. Or it's,
Table view is too little.
yeah, it's.
If I start rolling this, notice it calls it more times.
Whoa. Whoa.
Make sense? Okay, so it only does the amount of work it has to do based on what can visually be seen. Things that the user cannot see yet, we won't use processing power in the background to do that. But now I have full control to make my table view larger. So I can go back into my storyboard and I can drag this table view down.
Interesting on that one that it actually just says prototype cells rather than something, or nothing at all, or just label.
Let's call this roll history. All right, so here's our roll history now. We have a bigger table view, so we should see this guy will get called, I think, all 10 times now. We're pretty close to it. Yep, all 10 times because they all fit on the screen. So there's all of our blahs.
So how do you
right there.
differentiate the 2 sections there?
Oh, well, we can't actually see the section divider here, so let's go in here. Here's our table view. No, there's a thing we can turn on for section divider, I think.
Section divider or separator?
Did you see section separator? No, that's not it. Otherwise, I have to do a title for section thing, and then we'd see it. All right, I'll just show it to you real quick.
I trust that it's there. I was just curious.
Well, let me show it to you real quick. So I'm going to go to the documentation, and we're going to go to UI table view data source. And there's a function in there that's like title for section. Let's see.
Title for table of section.
Title for header in section, this guy. All right, so title for header in section. Oh, we want the Swift version of this. That's this guy right here. So we'll go ahead and put that into our code. All right, and this guy will return section. So it'd be section 0, section 1 for both of those. And this was optional. We didn't have to implement this, but now we're choosing to have titles for our headers in our section. I think headers will show up by default if we provide them. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's section 0, there's section 1. If we'd like to have multiple sections. Not that common, but something that can happen.
Do you make them scroll independently of each other, or would you have to?
You would have to use 2 different tables then. Yeah. Okay, so in any case, that's the scoop. But realistically, we would probably have our thing set up like this, and we probably would not do this. And now we'd only have 5 rows that show up because we only actually have 1 section. Okay. All right. So now, rather than filling up our table with just hard-coded values, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and have maybe an array that is the source for these guys. So we're going to come up top here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, we're going to give ourselves a var. Actually, we're not going to change the value. So can we do a let? I don't remember the rule for that. So we're going to say let the row data be equal to a array of strings like this. And then in here, let's just have a quick little loop. So for int I is equal to, that's not the right language. So for var I is equal to 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. What are we going to do each time? We're going to say self.therowData.append, and we're going to append the string. Let's just do, oh, sorry. Let's just say row space 0, row space 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. All right, yeah, so it doesn't seem to like that, so I do need to make it a var. Yeah, it seemed like since I'm not actually changing the value of this, I'm adding to it, that I could have made it a let, but that's not the case. So var is required. So now I have a global array here for this class, and inside of viewDidLoad, which is the equivalent to the watches, what is it called? Activate? Awake with context. Yep. So viewDidLoad for the phone is the same as awake with context. Okay, or similar. It's the first point in time where we have access to the phone's stuff. All right, so we're just going to go through and we're going to fill up that array with a bunch of strings. Okay, and now we're still only going to have one section, but instead of randomly returning 5, we're now going to return the rowData.count. That's the number of rows we'll have. The rowData.count number of rows. And instead of hard coding it to blah, we're going to set it to self.therowData at bucket indexPath.row. So indexPath, let me just show you this real quick. It's a variable that we got right here. So for indexPath, this guy has a row and has a section. So the section will be a 0 or a 1 or a 2, depending on which section this is. For our world right now, section will always be 0 because we only returned one section. And then row will be the row within that section. So based on the fact that index path has two pieces of information stored in it, a row and a section, what kind of animal is an index path? Based on what we've learned about in here. Couple. Yeah.
Tuple?
Tuple is actually a pretty accurate statement, and the historical background for tuple is what? A struct. Yeah, this guy's actually a struct. So structs don't have functions associated with them, they just hold values. So index path is a single variable name that holds two pieces of information, the row and the section. Okay, for us, most of the time, all we care about is, since most of our table views only have one section in them, which row are you asking me for? All right. If we're getting row 0, this will be index path, that row will be 0. Index path, that row will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're using that to index through our row data, which is our global array. That global array, we know we're going to be within the bounds of that because we've advertised that the number of total rows that this table view will have is equal to the number of total strings in our row data. Right there. All right, so this guy will get called exactly the same number of times as we have elements in here. Make sense? So instead of hard coding stuff, we're now reading in from an array. Go ahead and run this again, and now we see we have row 0 through row 9. Okay, now what if I want to add something to this table view? So let's go ahead and let's give ourselves a little add button up here. So I want to show you how to update it. All right, so we'll go in here. And we're going to go to our bar button item, this guy. Drag him up there, and his, let's see, we're going to make him a add button. All right, so you can do that with the style of the button. So it's a system item add. And now we want this to be associated with an action. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and give ourselves a second view controller. So pretty similar to how we handle multiple. Yeah, it always does. It always, because on the phone side of things, it does something called AutoSizing. So I almost always
just
resize it down to the size of a phone just for spacing. But AutoSizing allows you to kind of mess with constraints to make it fit on all sorts of different size devices. We've talked about the problem of fragmentation in here. Auto-sizing is Apple's approach to how do you fix fragmentation. We're not going to spend much time on that in here, at least not at this point. So right now we're just going to assume this thing runs on the iPhone 6.
You just assume it runs on everything.
Yeah, we can just assume it runs on everything, but it might not look equal on everything.
You just never check that out. Therefore it does.
That's true. If you want to really cover your butt there, then what you can do is just set the phone size to the 3.5 inch. That will run on iPhone 1 up to present with some thickness of bar at the bottom and top. Okay. So it will nicely center it in the middle of your device.
I want to see that on a 6 Plus.
All right, so I usually pick the iPhone 6. We don't want to support apps for the people who aren't running up-to-date hardware, likely aren't going to give us their money for our app, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, they're too cheap. If they're running an iPhone 3, okay, they're running an iPhone 3G, they're not buying our app.
I still run into people like that. I saw somebody like, this bad.
Yeah, so we're going to treat them as second, third, fourth class citizens, and even within that group, they're the steerage of that group. What was I talking about?
Just literally put a paywall. Oh, you're running a 3S? Sorry, we need $1.
Yeah,
$.
that's right. In-app purchase. The app launches. That they're not running the latest version. When the app launches, it literally is an in-app purchase to unlock app for crap hardware.
Legacy Sport. There
Do
you
you
go.
think that would get through Apple?
Probably not, but you can Easter egg it.
Yeah.
You know, I could be after a couple of. I had a friend of mine had this idea. Well, it might have been my idea for the app. Actually, it sounds like something I would come up with. Okay, never actually put this in, but it would have been so easy to do. So when the App Store first went live, and so I was making a zillion different apps. So I had all these like little kids apps. So my brother had a young son at the time. So things where you like, you click on different things that makes noises, so you learn words and that kind of stuff. And then you make it like $15 because parents were just buying everything, right? So really taking advantage of parents and technology where they're allowing their smartphones to raise their kids. So we were talking about putting these Easter eggs in there where, most of the time you're hitting the sounds that's, making little moo noises and things like that. And every now and then,
it would just make a purchase.
No. It would make not a moo noise.
Well,
it would say words that probably shouldn't be.
that's the Fight Club approach. You splice in the...
So I promised I didn't actually. Ooh, what the heck? Is that?
Colorado coffee?
It's like grease on the outside.
Are you sure it's not something
It's
else?
probably dried coffee.
Are you sure it's not something else? I mean, were you wiping with that hand?
Yeah, I was. Okay, so in any case, we want to go ahead and have this add button take us to this next screen. And we do that the exact same way we do it for the watch. So just control drag. We get it over here. So we'll go ahead and say show. And we want this screen to be kind of a data entry screen for us right now. I'm not going to do too much with this for us because it's not really going to be what this app is going to be for. Ultimately, your homework assignment is to have this table view fill up with all of the roles that you make on the watch. So every single time your watch makes a new roll, it needs to notify the phone about that new roll so we can update his stuff. Okay? And we'll see that here in a second.
Phone will send it to the TV.
So I'm going to go ahead and just so we can make sure we get enough content in here, I'm going to give ourselves a text field. And here we'll make it look nice and pretty since it only takes a second. So we'll throw our navigation bar up here. And we'll just call this guy new entry. Okay, and this guy is going to have a placeholder text for it. So this is something we're not used to on the watch side of things because there's no keyboard on the watch. So we're going to have a text field, and we're going to say enter string name or something like that. Good enough. And I'll center that. So that's our placeholder. We're going to go ahead and give this guy a code behind. So we'll right click here, we'll do new file, Cocoa Touch class, he's going to be a UIViewController. Alright, and we'll call this guy data entry VC, something like that. We'll go ahead and add him to the project. Alright, so here's our code behind for that. Go back out to our storyboard. And let's make sure this guy is now of that type. So he's no longer a generic UIViewController. He's now a data entry VC. Same thing we did on the watch. Okay, exact same stuff. We're doing it on the phone side of things. Okay, now I'm going to give myself programmatic access to this table, this text field rather. Actually, I don't think that it shouldn't allow me to drop it there.
I don't know why it hasn't
Alright.
doing that. It seems
So-
like at first it didn't, but now it does.
We're going to call this the text field. Good enough. All right, so now kind of an interesting thing. So let's just go ahead and hit play here real quick and make sure our plus button works. So we hit this, it takes us to this next screen, and then when I click on this, the keyboard slides up. Okay, but we'd really like that keyboard to slide up right off the bat, right? So just to kind of show you how that would work. Inside of data entry VC, inside of view did load, which is my first time I have access to these widgets, I'll say self.the text field become first responder. So become first responder is equivalent to us clicking on that text field, which will then make the keyboard automatically slide up.
Okay, so it'll automatically put the cursor in the keyboard.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
See, it's already there. Yep. It's as if you touched it.
Right.
You know. Now the reality is now it sucks typing. Oh, it allows me to type. The simulator, one of the simulators doesn't let you do that. If the keyboard's slid up, it doesn't let you type.
Yes.
All right, so the idea here is we want to be able to hit save or hit cancel, type something in here, hit save, and have it added to our first guy here. Now the problem is we need to go back now to a singleton approach. We have two screens that both need access to, where's this guy? That both need access to this collection of row data. Make sense? All right, so what we need to do here is I'm going to go ahead and give ourselves a singleton. So we'll create a new file. This guy's going to be a Cocoa Touch class. He's going to be an NS object. And we'll call this guy, let's see, Dice Roller Phone Core. Good enough, I guess. Let's just call it Phone Core, be shorter. All right. So we have this guy, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to move our array into there. And we'll make him static. All right, so there's that guy. Now inside of main TVC, instead of saying self dot, we're going to say phone core dot. So steal it from there. Steal it from there. So on and so forth. Okay, so we just change the location of that array up into our singleton so he has access to it, which then is going to allow us to have access to it from this other screen. All right, so this guy right here, we're going to go ahead and give ourselves a couple of buttons. So we'll have a bar button item here called save. We'll have another bar button item here called cancel. All right, we'll go ahead and give ourselves actions for both of those. Ooh. That's just weird.
Notice it's done that too. I think
Yeah.
I don't think it did that before with the last update.
I'm going to scroll down here. Here's a nice little, we'll be able to land it in there. There we go. This guy's going to be in action. And this is cancel button pressed. And then we're going to do the same thing for our save button. And this is going to be in action. And this is save button pressed. Alright, so let's go ahead and write cancel button pressed first. So we'll go into data entry, go down to our cancel button, and if we do this, we're not going to be adding anything to our app or whatever. So we're going to say self.dismiss viewController animated true. And then for completion block, we'll say nil. Alright, so the first screen presented that viewController, the second one's going to dismiss it if we hit cancel, which just says go away. Alright. Let's see. Okay, so we'll click here, then we'll hit cancel, and it goes away. Make sense? Alright, so now we want our save button to work. So if we type something in here and then we hit save, we want this guy to update the global thing. But then we also want our table view to update. We'll see right now it doesn't. So in the save button, and we're not going to check for right now whether or not they actually put text in there. We'll just assume they did. All right. So in the save button, we'll go ahead and we're going to say, what do I call it? Phone core. Phone core.therowdata.append self.thetextfield.text. So we're just going to append to that guy whatever they put in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and dismiss the viewController. And we have to tell this dude to trust me there's something in there. Okay. And then we'll dismiss it. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and run this. So we have our original 9 things that we put in there, right? We'll say add one, and then we'll say blah. So we're going to add a 10th or 11th thing, I guess now. I'll hit save. It should add it to the global array and then take me back to the previous screen, but we see that we do not see blah in here. Okay, we don't see blah in here because it has not actually refreshed the data for this table.
And if you try and scroll it, will it?
No. Well, it could. That could trigger a refresh. I mean, it's not unreasonable to guess at that, is what I'm saying. It wasn't a completely stupid question.
It's just blah, I guess.
Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to tell that table view, I've updated your data, you need to reload your data. So we're going to do that here by letting our phone core know about our table view. So we're going to say static var the TV is going to be a UI table view. All right, and then inside of main TVC in view did load, we're going to go ahead and let phone core dot the TV equal TV. So we'll link those guys here. Make sense? So I let the global guy know I gave him a pointer to my table view if I'm main TVC, which then allows me over here in data entry VC, when I hit save, before I dismiss this guy, I can say phonecore.thetv.reload data. I can let the guy know on the previous screen, go ahead and reload your data because I'm about to show you something. I'm about to show you to the user again, and I've updated your data source. Make sense? So now, we'll go ahead, run this again. I don't know why the simulator is not popping up. So we have 0 through 9 now. We'll put in blah. We'll hit save, and there's blah. Bang on the keyboard, hit save. There's the other thing.
Then you have cat.
Okay.
Cat.
Okay, so on and so forth. That kind of makes sense? Okay. Now, just like before, so if we come in here and we take out the initial stuff in our main TVC, so we don't actually have 10 things in there initially. Now when I launch the app, it'll be empty until I start putting stuff in there. So I'll run it, we'll say blah, save, now there's something in there, run it again, save, so on and so forth, okay? All right, so now for your homework, you're going to be having this guy, well, you won't have a data entry thing here for your homework. The data entry thing was showing you how you can fill this in. You're going to be putting together the stuff we've been talking about the last several classes with the WC session. Whenever you roll something on the watch, it's going to send that message, the result of that roll, to the table view, to the phone, and it's going to update the table view, so the table view now shows your history of rolls. That make sense? And you can use NS user defaults to maintain those through runs of the application. Just like you use NS user defaults on the watch side of things, you can use it on the phone side of things.
Does it have its own separate NS user?
It does have its own separate NS user defaults. By default, it does. You don't have to use it any different. They are just two separate dudes.
Could you just use the watch's NS user defaults and then on load, when it loads, just send it to the phone to update? Rather than
Probably.
Okay.
Now, hold on.
That's what I was thinking.
Did I?
That's what I was thinking too.
Let me just. I want to make sure that I have this guy set up to. We go to this. I just want to make sure this is updated on here. So here's my repositories. 16 seconds ago. Yeah, this guy. All right. All right. So it's already up there. I gave you the link to the GitHub repository. So if you want to start with mine as a starting point, you can. All right. I'll see everybody on Friday.